It's the time of the year where I get to look back on my 2022 predictions to see just how wrong I was. I haven't watched this video since I made it. I think it was the third video that I made on my channel. So we'll see how my predictions were. I did it before testing. There was still a lot of rumors out there about how teams were doing. So I don't know. We'll see how it is, and I'll see what I said about each driver. Let's get started.
In this video, I'm
in my old place
predictions
too
for the constructor standings, the driver standings, and then give you 3 spicy hot takes that I think might happen.
My spicy hot takes. We'll see how those are too. All right, let's keep going here.
First up, we have the constructors standings. And in 10th place, I have Williams.
Okay, so first off the bat, Williams last. I had it.
The biggest reason I have Williams in 10th is that I'm very worried about their financial situation and how much that might have distracted from their ability to develop a good car for 2022. I'm also worried with their driver lineup. I just think it's going to take Alex a little bit of time to get used to the car, and I just don't really trust Latifi. And I think they will get some points, but together not enough to beat the other teams.
So I was actually pretty spot on with Williams, which I think it might be the only time that I say that. They are still trying to recover from troubling financial times, and Albert did adjust quite quickly to that car, but other than that, I was pretty spot on with that.
In 9th, I have Haas. I just think that with the amount of time that they spent developing the car, that they will be able to do much better than they did last year. I generally trust that Schumacher will be able to do well, and I think he will get the most out of the car, and he tends to do better in his second year as well. I have zero faith in Mazepin.
Oh,
maybe he won't get points. I don't know. Maybe he will. Who knows with how crazy some of these races might get. But I think Schumacher will carry the team, and I think Haas will manage to squeak into 9th.
Oh, Mazepin. I almost forgot about that guy. So I guess part of this prediction is irrelevant. I think I had commented on this video once K-Meg came in how it would change my order, so I might mention that a little bit later. Haas, I think, ended up finishing 8th, so they actually aren't too far off where I had them. Schumacher didn't carry the team, but I think he would have if Mazepin was there. Although they definitely wouldn't have gotten nearly as many points without K-Meg, so.
In 8th place, I have Alfa Romeo. And I think that it might be possible that they will have the slowest car of the year. But I think Bottas will be able to get the most out of that car, and I think he will qualify well and probably fall back in the races, kind of like they did last year.
I don't think anyone could have predicted how good that Alfa Romeo was at the start of the year. I think if it was closer to the Alfa Romeo that was at the end of the year, I think this would have been a much better prediction, but I don't think anyone saw how good Bottas was at the start of the year coming. Bit of an L there, that's 2 positions off where Alfa finished.
In 7th, I have Aston Martin.
Okay, I think that was spot on.
This partially comes from my worry about what's been going on behind the scenes with the team. The restructuring of things, the fact that they haven't quite got their factory up and running yet and all the infrastructure's ready to go. I just worry that they're a little bit behind in terms of development. So maybe they'll get better throughout the year.
Oh.
But I think they're going to start off kind of rough.
Oh, wow. I was spot on with them too. Did I maybe I'm a prophet. I don't know. But yeah, they started off the year slow and then got better as the year went on. So I'm wondering if they didn't spend a ton of money actually making the car and then left a lot to develop it over the year. I'm wondering if that's kind of part of their strategy. But yeah, they did end up finishing 7th, so I was spot on with that.
In 6th, I have AlphaTauri. I worry for the Red Bull cars a little bit this year. I know that Honda is staying on now, I think. I'm still confused about that whole situation with Red Bull powertrains, and is Honda taking over? Is it doing a transition? Like, what's going on there? AlphaTauri always does worse than Red Bull.
Yes.
Always, every year. And I think this is just about where they're going to fit in any year, really. I don't know how much they could ever do much higher than this. I hope they could prove me wrong.
Yeah, they did by being worse.
Gasly, you never know.
Oh, AlphaTauri. They had a shocker of a year. And considering how good the Red Bull is compared to how bad they were, like, at least it proves that they're separate entities. But yikes, I think they finished, what, 9th, I think, behind Haas. So I'm 3 spots off with them. That is pretty brutal.
In 5th, I have Alpine. And unfortunately, this means that L-Plan might not have gone fully to plan. My biggest worry with them, kind of similar to Aston Martin, is the restructuring of management behind the scenes. The things that Alain Prost said on his way out the door is a little bit worrying. And I think if everything is coming down from the top in a dictatorial way, that worries me, because there isn't a diversity of opinions, and sometimes that can lead to not as much creativity or not as good of a car. I hope that they can do well despite all that, and I love Alonso and Ocon. I think they're one of the most wholesome pairs on the grid.
Oh my god. Like, coming out of 2021, they were the most wholesome, because you just saw how happy Fernando was for Ocon's victory in Hungary. But I think it was because that Alpine wasn't that great. But now that they started to battle a bit more, and just right off the bat in Saudi, you could already see, okay, this isn't going to be like 2021. They're going to be at each other all season, and that's kind of how it ended up going.
I just worry that these things that are happening behind the scenes kind of hints at something that's not quite right there, and a little bit of red flags.
Yeah, and that ended up manifesting itself in Alonso leaving and Piastri doing his whole thing. But yeah, most of what I said about Alpine rings true. Just, there is something sinister going on there that has meant that almost every single driver that goes there wants to leave. And I'm so curious about what that might be.
Now, the top 4, I think, are all going to be quite close, barring that these regulations have worked the way they're intended to. But in 4th, I have McLaren. I think my biggest reason for this is, again, just that they haven't got their infrastructure quite up and running yet. I think it's going to be another year or 2 before they're fully ready to compete for a championship.
So I had McLaren and Alpine switched, which I feel like is probably the case for a lot of people. I don't think people would have seen Alpine's resurgence coming, and McLaren definitely dropped the ball on this car.
3rd, I have Red Bull. And I think the biggest reason for this is that they went all in 2021. With the amount of time that they had to focus on that championship run, would have had to have taken some out of their 2022 focus. So I just think that it's going to impact them at the start, at least, and it might take them a little while to get caught up to everyone else.
Yes. My narrative that I thought Red Bull was going to drop back. The problem was, I did not know the power of Adrian Newey. And when you have a change in regulations, especially aerodynamic regulations, and it's to the type of car that he literally started on when he first started in F1 with the ground effect cars, of course he's going to be able to develop a good car. I don't think anyone expected how good of a car he would, but it was actually Mercedes that seemed to have been impacted a little bit more by the fight in 2021.
In 2nd, I have Mercedes. And I think similar to Red Bull, I think their competition last year might have impacted their ability to develop the 2022 car. I also worry that with everything that happened in Abu Dhabi last year, that might have also kind of caused a little bit of a distraction to their ability to develop the car. But you can never count Mercedes out. Yeah. They know how to deal with regulation changes and make a good car. And so I still think they're going to come second, but
they almost did.
They're just going to lose out a little bit to my number one team.
Yeah, I don't think anyone saw the drop that Ferrari's had coming. I would have thought they would have been a little bit impacted by 2021, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I think they said it themselves that they made one error back in a decision that they made in October. I don't think 2021 really impacted that decision. So realistically, I don't think my reasoning here was correct.
My number one team, which is Ferrari. And Ferrari, maybe this is a bit optimistic, but I think that they're going to be able to get their car to where it needs to be, and I think that they have the strongest driver lineup in the grid. Okay. And I think that is going to be the biggest reason why they win. Leclerc and Sainz have the ability to get the most out of that Ferrari and be consistent with it. And I think that might be a big thing too, is the ability to be consistent.
Okay. I had way too much faith in the Ferrari master plan. There was a lot of hype out there around their car. They started developing it more early in 2021, but just the strategy calls. I had way too much faith in Ferrari. So I learned my lesson there, and until they prove otherwise, I don't think I'm ever going to predict them as number one again. Brutal. So I kind of had the top three. So I had the top three in kind of the right places. I had 4, 5 in the right places. 6 through 9, pretty mixed up, and then Williams right. So like I wasn't far off, but hi. I've decided I'm going to try and track this year to year. So I'm going to sum up how many positions off each team was, and that'll kind of be a quantitative value to say how I did this year, and I'll compare it year to year and see how I improve as I learn more about the sport of F1. The Constructors, I finished with a total of 12, which I think, all things considered, and for it being like the first year of a regulation change, not terrible. My worst one was AlphaTauri being 3 spots off. Let's keep going then to the drivers.
In last place, I have Guan Yu Zhou. And I think the biggest reason for this is just he's the only rookie, and it's going to take him a while to get used to being an F1. I have more faith in him as a driver than I do Mazepin, but I just think with the adjustments and seeing last year how hard it was for rookies to get acclimatized to the grid, I feel like he's gonna finish last, unfortunately.
Okay, I guess it's reasonable. I literally knew absolutely nothing about Zhou coming into last season, and Zhou actually ended up finishing 18th, so I was only 2 positions off. Yeah, I think it did take him a little bit of time to get adjusted or acclimatized to that Alfa Romeo car, but really after Silverstone, I would say that he was pretty comfortable in it and started to do better, although at that point the car wasn't as good, so I don't think he ever really scored any points to make the most of his improved driving. So yeah, I had way too much faith in Latifi and Mazepin.
In 19th, I have Mazepin.
Okay.
Doesn't really need to be too much of an explanation for this. He was just god-awful last year.
I can't believe I had Mazepin above Zhou. What a terrible take. Oh, God. Okay, well, let's keep going.
In 18th, I have Latifi. I just think that the Williams isn't going to be a very good car, and I just don't really have faith in Latifi as a driver. I think he will get points again. He'll be able to capitalize if there's a chaotic race, but I just don't have faith in that Williams car.
Yeah, that's fair. Zhou benefited from being in a better car than the Williams, and Latifi suffered for the loss of Mazepin because otherwise I think he would have looked a lot better. But Latifi was really the only driver this year who was very off the pace and not fit for F1, so it looked a bit bad on him.
17th, I have Albon, and I think he's gonna score a little bit more points than Latifi, but again, that Williams car, I just don't have any faith in it.
Yeah, so I was spot on with the bad Williams car, and Albon finished 19th.
And I really hope that he proves me wrong, but between the four of these drivers, I don't think they're gonna have very many points between them.
It's actually true, because Albon had 4 points, Latifi had 2, and Joe... How many points did Joe have? Joe had 6 points. I did this obviously before testing and before Mazepin was evicted from Formula One. So what I ended up doing is I had Kevin Magnussen basically finishing in 17th in the standings, and that just pushes Albon and Latifi down a spot. So it only really affects the bottom 4 in terms of where I had them in the order. But yeah, I don't think anyone could have seen the events of Ukraine coming and the fact that Mazepin got booted because of it.
Here's my first hot take. I don't really know why I did this. I don't know, just a gut feeling, but I have Lance Stroll in 16th. You never know what could happen with this grid. You don't know how the cars are gonna go. I don't know. This is just a shot in the dark. Honestly, I have no explanation for having Stroll this low.
Stroll was 15th, so I was only 1 off on him as well. So not too bad. I just had a gut feeling that Aston Martin wasn't going to be good and that Stroll would suffer more than Vettel. Not that terrible of a take. So way to trust your gut on one single driver.
In 15th, I have Schumacher. And I think that he is going to be able to get a lot out of the Haas car, and I think he's going to have some strong qualifying sessions.
He did.
Get into Q3 a few times, and I think he's going to get into the points.
He did.
Several times next year. I have a little bit more faith in the Haas car this year.
So, yeah, I did have faith in Schumacher, and he ended up finishing 16th, so I was 1 off on him as well. He struggled at the start of the year when the Haas was actually good, and then once he managed to settle down, he only managed to get a few points here and there, and he finished with 12 points, which is double Joe. But I think most of that came in Austria. I think that was his really strong race.
In 14th, I have Valtteri Bottas. I just think that in Lewis's shadow, we were all very critical of him because he couldn't live up to Lewis. No one can beat Lewis. And I think going to Alfa Romeo is going to be a really good situation for him. He's going to have a lot less pressure. And I just think that once he does get used to the Alfa Romeo car, I think he's going to do quite well and be able to get the most out of the car.
I don't think anyone could have, like I said earlier, I don't think anyone could have seen how strong he would be right off the bat in that Alfa Romeo. Him and that car just clicked right away. And he capitalized when the car was good and still managed to finish 10th, even though I think he only got a single point in the second half of the season. So good for Bottas. I think he was probably one of my biggest L's in terms of driver guesses.
And in 13th, I have Sebastian Vettel. I really hope that I'm wrong here. I love Seb. I just want him to do well. I just don't think that Aston Martin is ready to have a competitive car.
Okay. Yeah, I was 1 off for Seb. Seb finished in 12th. But yeah, I think I somehow really nailed how Aston Martin would do. Towards the end of the year, Seb looked way stronger than at the start of the year. And so I'm glad that he was able to make up some positions.
Now in 12th, I have Yuki Tsunoda. I think that this is going to be Tsunoda's breakout season. I think he's going to do much better than he did last year.
Yeah, debatable.
The results that he was starting to see at the end of last year kind of shows that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, I think, was Alex Albon's mentorship, which won't continue this year. So we'll see how that goes for Yuki. But I just think he's used to the car now. He has a much better understanding of things and also knows how to temper his speed. and
Yeah, he did
kind
better
of
job.
to go for it when not to, and he seemed to
I wouldn't say
start
that.
to be getting a hang of that at the end of last year, and I think that's just going to continue over into 2022.
The AlphaTauris were my biggest L. I had Yuki finishing 12th and he finished 17th he also had 12 points, so same as Mick. Part of this was bad luck. Yuki definitely, on races where he could have scored points, ran into some issues, in particular Baku, like he was running in the points in that race. Then his rear wing decided to break and they had to fix it with duct tape. Pretty wild. Yeah, big L. And Pierre, oh my god, Pierre's gonna be even bigger.
In 11th, I have Esteban Ocon. And I think that without his win last year, he would have finished lower on the grid than he did, and I just don't feel like he's going to be able to get a win in 2022.
Nope.
Maybe a podium.
No.
But
It was close. He came 4th in Japan.
That the Alpine is quite ready to be competing for race wins on a regular basis without chaos. So I think this is about where I see Alpine finishing.
Yeah, I was 3 off with Esteban as well. He finished 8th with 92 points. Yeah, I a little bit underestimated how well Alpine would do, but that was to be expected, I think.
In 10th, I have Pierre Gasly. And Gasly, I just have so much faith in him as a driver. He's proven time and time again that he is able to get a lot out of that Alpha.
Not this year.
He'll drop off a little bit from last year just because I don't think that the Red Bull cars are going to be as fast as they were the year before. I have more faith in Gasly as a driver than I do as AlphaTauri as a team.
Yes, that is a fair take. I think Pierre could have done way better in a more decent car, obviously. But I do think that he lost some motivation after Monaco and after Perez got announced to the Red Bull seat. He definitely dropped off after that, and so did the AlphaTauri. So yeah, another L, because Pierre finished 14th. That AlphaTauri really screwed me in these predictions.
In 9th, I have Fernando Alonso, and I just think that now that he's accustomed to Alpine, he's gonna get the most out of that car in every single race.
Yep.
And
the ones he finished anyways.
Such a good defensive driver, such a good driver all around, really. And I think that he's going to be the best of the rest because I think the top 4 teams are all going to be quite close.
I was spot on with Fernando. So pretty happy with that. Yeah. He wasn't best of the rest because McLaren was in with that grouping, so technically 7th place would be best of the rest, but yeah, he did quite well to get that 9th spot.
In 8th, I have Daniel Ricciardo once again. I have a lot of faith that Daniel's going to do much better this year than he did last year. I think the car will be a little bit more suited for him.
No!
And he's going to be closer to Lando than he was, but I just think that the team is probably going to favor Lando in a lot of their strategy decisions, at least to start the year. And if that continues throughout the year, it's just going to bump Daniel down a little bit.
Yep. Oh, I had so much hope for Ricciardo, and it just got worse. And I wish I could tell this Robin to not have that much hope because it just hurts so much. It's the hope that kills you. And that's why I was 3 spots off with Ricciardo as well, because he came 11th, finished outside the top 10 for the first time since his HRT days, I want to say, or maybe AlphaTauri he finished once outside the top 10, but I just really suffered on that one. I think it hurts the most, even though I was only 3 off.
In 7th, I have Sergio Perez, and the biggest reason for this is I think similar to last year, they're going to sacrifice him quite a bit on behalf.
Yeah, they did do that.
He just doesn't qualify quite as well as some of the other drivers at the top of the grid, and I think that's going to cause him to suffer a little bit in the races.
This was an L take. I did have the Red Bull finishing third, but still, to have him behind Lando. Oh, Robin, what were you thinking? There hasn't been a team that's managed to get into that top three. Well, I guess McLaren did in 2020, but just such a bad take, terrible take, especially since he finished third, 4 spots off of that. Like, oh my god, terrible.
In 6th, I have Lando Norris. And Lando, I think he's going to outperform Daniel again. And I think he's going to get the benefit for strategy, and I really hope he gets his first race win.
No.
And I think 6th is about where he can finish if the other 3 teams don't underperform.
Yeah, so I was about right with Norris, 1 spot off. Yeah, not much else to say there.
I have George Russell in 5th. I think George is a fantastic qualifier. He's proven that time and time again with Williams. I worry about his racecraft. I think that being at the back for the past few years, he might be a little bit out of practice in terms of battling with the top drivers at the end of the grid. So I think it's going to take him a little while to get used to the Mercedes.
I was only 1 spot off with Russell because he finished in 4th. But I don't know, like the fact that his racecraft would be off a little bit kind of did come true in the sense that he caused a lot of collisions. However, he hit the ground running in that Mercedes, and he was in the top 5 in every single race until Great Britain. So that was a bit of an L take, but I wasn't too far off how George would do.
In 4th place, I have Carlos Sainz. Carlos has shown that he can be an incredibly consistent driver, and he was the only driver last year to be able to finish every single race. And I think this is going to be a huge asset this year with the cars all being, I'm thinking, quite tightly packed, and a lot of movement in terms of which cars is going to be the fastest throughout the year. My only worry with him is that his qualifying isn't quite as good as his teammates. And a lot of people have Carlos finishing ahead of Charles.
Terrible take.
I just think that last year Charles got unbelievably unlucky, and I think over the course of a season, if their luck is equal, I think Charles gets the edge.
I think Carlos suffered this year from bad luck that evened out from his good luck in 2021, because the number of times that this man was taken out on lap 1 or 2 is quite astonishing. I think it was 3 or 4 times, which is horrendous. The poor guy. And then back it was lap 7. So like just no luck for that guy. He ended up finishing 5th, so I was only 1 off with him as well.
In 3rd place, I have Max.
Oh god.
And I just don't see how Max can finish any lower than 3rd.
Yeah, fair.
But I think that the Red Bull is going to be worse in 2022 than it was in 2021. So I think this is
you
about
sweet
the
summer child
that he will be able to achieve. Of course, knowing Max, he could prove me wrong.
Yes, he did.
He's a fantastic driver, but I just have less faith in that Red Bull, especially off the bat.
L takes, Robin, L takes. Max has been incredibly consistent since the start of the 2020 season, and I think this is more so to do with the fact that I thought that the Red Bull car was going to be worse. He's by far the best driver on the grid right now, and so, yeah. Anyways, so I was 2 off of that, obviously.
In 2nd place, I have Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
And I just think that that Ferrari car is going to be really, really good. I'm really hoping that it's good.
Yep, it was.
Charles is going to do extremely well. He's proven to be a very capable driver when given the car.
Yes, he is.
My only worry with him is that this is going to be his first championship fight.
Okay,
and
Max
was able to seal the victory. I worry about Charles' ability to get it done.
Yeah, I got Charles correct. It was kind of his first championship fight, and you did kind of see it get to him, especially in France and Imola, but yeah, it was more so the Ferrari falling off. But yeah, I had the position right, so I'm going to take that as a win. And for the worst take, what ended up being, well, tied for my worst place driver is my number one spot.
Pick for drivers champion next year is Lewis Hamilton, because I think Lewis is going to come back with an absolute vengeance, and he's going to want to stick it.
He did. Did he come back with a vengeance?
2021 championship away from him. He's going to want to stick it to the FIA. He's going to want to destroy all the other drivers, and I just think he is going to come back with a level of focus that we haven't seen in him since 2017, when he came back after losing to Rosberg. And I hope that he can do this. I have a lot of faith in him as a driver, and until we see him drop off, I will not believe that he will drop off.
Well, we saw him drop off. not too much. I think he was still outperforming Russell for a lot of the second half of the year, but he had a few uncharacteristic mistakes, and he also just didn't have the car. And so I am 5 spots off with Lewis. I had him finishing, or he ended up finishing 6th, and I had him in 1st. But yeah, that Mercedes car just really let him down. But he definitely had lost focus, but I just wonder that it was a year in which he wasn't fighting for the championship, and so I wonder if he kind of mentally took a bit of a year off in that respect. Although he still was very consistent and still is a quality driver, even though his placement in the driver standings didn't fully reflect that. I think he just had a little bit more unluckiness than Russell did. So my total for this year, in terms of my prediction for the drivers, is 44. So we'll see how I do in 2023. All right, now we're going to get to my 3 hot takes. Let's see how these go.
My first hot take is that we are going to have 3 new race winners in 2022. My prediction for this is going to be Carlos, Lando, and George. But who knows, we might have something completely wild happen, and maybe we get like a Tsunoda victory or a Lance Stroll victory.
I was almost right. I'm going to call this a half point because there were 2 new race winners. We had obviously Carlos Sainz and George Russell. Something that I wish I maybe would have predicted is having new pole sitters, because I believe we had 4 new pole sitters last year. We had Carlos, we had George, we had Sergio, and we had Kevin Magnussen, which was absolutely wild. Yeah, I'd say I'd take this as a win. 2 out of 3 isn't bad.
My second spicy hot take is I think that the Ferraris are going to collide this year. I just get the sense that Carlos and Charles both being so capable, things have the potential to get a bit tense and spicy in the Ferrari garage. I don't have a huge amount of trust in their ability to manage their drivers, especially after 2019 and 2020.
They did clash a little bit, but it was more so over the radio with various position calls being made. But I don't think they ever even touched wings the entire season. So, yeah, that's a bit of an L. But next year, oh boy, next year is going to be very interesting. So we will see how there's so many driver pairings that are going to get heated, I think. And I will probably have some sort of prediction about that come the 2023 season. I'm giving myself the holidays to ponder it over.
And my third hot take. This one's my spiciest. I don't know. I think it'll be funny if this happens, but I think it has potential, honestly. But I think that Max Verstappen is gonna face a race ban.
Oh god.
Max has 7 penalty points currently on his license, and you need 12 for a race ban. But these points are on his license until September, which means he's going to have to get through over half of the season before he loses any of these penalty points off his license. All it takes is doing one of his dive bombs that he did against Lewis last year. I think he might, with the regulations hopefully taking care of that, maybe this will be less likely to happen, but I just fear that he is going to continue to be the aggressive driver that he is, and it might get him into trouble.
I think this might have become more of an issue if Mercedes had had a good car and him and Lewis were still going at it race after race, because it seems to me that Max only races that hard against Lewis. You saw with Charles, like, he gave him enough space and they never really had any major issues going wheel to wheel. Because I think he did end up getting, did he get penalty points for that collision with Lewis? I think he must have, because you usually do if you get dinged with a penalty. So yeah, a bit of an L take. I think if he hadn't have been so dominant and run away with things, this might have been more true, but we'll see. However, I think it would have been a better prediction going into next year, because Pierre is on 10 penalty points right now, and he has to get until I want to say April or May before he loses any of those points. So Pierre's in a bit of trouble and might face a respan in 2023. However, I'm getting the sense that even if he does get to that point, I think the FIA are probably going to change the rules a bit, especially since I don't think you should be getting penalty points on your license for exceeding track limits. Like, that's just a bit silly, and I think he has like 2 or 3 penalty points because of that, or like being too far behind the safety car on a restart. Yeah, I think they're going to change the rules so that it's only like severe driving related incidents that put those penalty points on your license and cost towards a race ban, because I don't think anything that Pierre has done has been egregious enough to warrant getting to that point. So yeah, I think those rules are probably going to change, so I might not make that prediction again. So those were my L takes on the 2022 season from the start of the year. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed how terrible at predicting I was. And yeah, see you guys around. Bye.